Okay, welcome back. Day 3. Happy Wednesday, everyone. And so I am back with the 5 biggest blind spots that affect your DEI strategy. And if you've been following along all week, you're starting to know these blind spots. These aren't magical new things that you're like, I never knew that. Yet, what you also might be discovering is that these are blind spots because we tend to notice them in some areas, but not across our entire company or across our entire team. And in most cases, in ourselves. So, if something is our blind spot, we most likely are unaware of it unless we are sitting or within a culture of feedback and a culture that is thriving. Because when your culture is thriving, you understand that feedback is neutral. You understand there's no such thing as good feedback or bad feedback. It's just feedback for you to understand and uncover what's working, what's not working, what might be missing, and what's possible for you moving forward. And that also goes for your team, your organization, projects that you're working on as well. And so today we're going to talk about the third blind spot that we get to transform within our DEI and culture strategy, and that is looking good. And before I hop into looking good, I will briefly recap the first 2 blind spots that I shared with you this week, which the first one was playing it safe, which it sounds exactly like it is, being in the comfort zone, being more committed to being in the comfort zone than taking a risk, being authentic, being creative, being innovative, and being a leader, showing up and using your voice, being heard, taking a stand, sharing your ideas, sharing your questions, and being an integral part of your team rather than I call it a wog or a cog, actually, just being there, because that is replaceable. If you're just being on your team, being a follower, just going along with the flow, and this is known as conformity, that you are highly replaceable. And the reason you're on your team in your first place is because of you. There is something about you that whoever was a part of your hiring process felt this person will make a difference. This person will create impact. This person will be a contribution to our work. So playing it safe does not work. It does not work. You get to show up, you get to make mistakes, and you get to shift and pivot off of those mistakes. And that's all they are mistakes. It's nothing wrong with you. They're just things that happen along the way of, going for it and not playing it safe. And then the one that I shared yesterday is actually one of the biggest blind spots we see across all companies. And we see these blind spots in every company. But the second one that I shared yesterday, avoiding pain, is the biggest. And we believe this is what attributes to that 34% employee engagement rate across this country. So I shared yesterday that over the past 12 years, the highest the US employee engagement rate is 34%. And that is just astounding. And again, that is meaning, or that assumes that's over 65% of the time we are at work. And this has nothing to do with COVID. So I'm curious what the numbers are going to be for 2020. So this number is up until 2019. And so I'm curious, just if 65% of the time we are at work, we are not engaged in the work, my question is, what are we engaged in? What is taking up our time, our energy, our resources? What might that be? So the avoiding pain blind spot is a big one to look at. And the reason this is a big one to look at also is we believe that this exists as a blind spot because there are no checks and balances. These people are floating way below the radar, just in mediocrity. They're doing just enough to get by. They're putting in that bare minimum, and whoever is, the leader or holding things accountable is accepting the mediocrity and the bare minimum. And the people who avoid pain, there's nothing wrong or bad about them. They're just afraid to show up as authentic. And this sounds a lot like playing it safe, and how it differentiates and how it's distinguished from playing it safe is that they are checking out their emotions. And there's two ends of the spectrum, if you remember yesterday. That one end is they're just checked out, numbed out, going through the motions, like coming in at 9 on the dot, leaving at 5, and just like bare minimum. And then the other end of that spectrum are the people who just come in emotionless and steamroll, bulldoze, because they don't want to feel anything. They don't want to feel any pain. They don't want to be close. And both close with people and both ends of the spectrum are detrimental to relationships. And as we talked about, if you were able to hop into our webinar, The Future of DEI, the core of DEI and culture are relationships. The relationship we have with ourselves, the internal relationships we have with our coworkers, and then the external relationships we have with our clients, our customers, our potential customers, our vendors, our potential hires, our industry peers, and the marketplace we operate in. And so today, as we talk about looking good, this was one of my blind spots, the area I've been working on transforming, because when I worked in corporate, this was my big thing. I wanted to look good. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be on top. I wanted to create major results, and all of that sounds great, right? Yet, if this is in your blind spot, the reason this does not work in the workplace is that people who are committed more to looking good care more about the perceived impact or expectation of the result rather than the relationship. So they care more about the outcome than the process or the people they are working with or working for, hence your clients or your customers. And so the impact this has in the workplace and on relationships internally and externally is looking good people tend to be condescending, and they make others feel wrong, and they blame outside of themselves. Everything is not my fault, it's your fault. And there's no responsibility when this is when this is like really in someone's blind spot. If it's being brought up into their consciousness, if it's being reflected back to them in feedback, it starts to transform. So another thing is other people, and a lot of the times the project and the work pay a price when people are more concerned about looking good. Because looking good means you may not be the best person to collaborate with. You may not be enjoyable to work with. And people who are, being in this looking good blind spot, they do it to protect themselves because they want to feel accepted. And the way they feel accepted, included, and the way they feel like they belong is they have to be the best. And so when you're looking at your DEI strategy, specifically inclusion, this is a big one. So you could have a diverse group of people identity-wise. We've been talking about this all week. You can have a diverse group of race, gender, sexuality, religion, politics. You could have all that going on. Yet, if someone is experiencing looking good in their blind spot, one of the biggest ways they feel like they belong and feel included is if they're doing the best, if they're putting out the best work, which I know sounds great. I know a lot of CEOs are like, yay, that sounds amazing. Yet it's costing your culture, and it's costing external relationships because they'll do whatever it takes. And again, like we talked about the avoiding pain, that end of the spectrum with steamrolling and bulldozing, they too steamroll and bulldoze. And so in this idea of we built this great company, we have the best people, yet if your best people are experiencing this looking good blind spot, the collaboration goes down, communication goes down. And all of a sudden you have a group of people who are like lone rangers. They tend to just work by themselves. They isolate, and not isolate because, they don't feel like they're included. It's like the opposite. They isolate because they want it to be the best. And so they tend to experience burnout as well. And really, on the other side of that, well, before I go to the other side of that, so looking good is like that mask or veil or an armor that we put on to protect ourselves from failure, from looking bad, from making mistakes. And it's because we don't 100% accept who we are. We don't accept the fact that failure is just feedback. It has nothing to do, I am not a failure, but maybe what I was working on failed, or it had a setback, or there were mistakes in it. But that doesn't mean I am a mistake or I'm a failure. And really, the looking good nerd is all about judgment. These people fear judgment, and they are your biggest judgment. They are the people who judge the most in your company. So we all, if you haven't heard this before, judgment really is a projection out of what you are feeling or what you don't want to feel. And so judgment is projected and most likely reflected on how the person is judging themselves. So when we focus on looking good in the workplace, we lose our authenticity. We're not being ourselves. If you have a veil on, a mask, if you're like putting on a version or like just, being someone else in the workplace because you want to look good, there's no authenticity there. And when we deny and when we do not show up authentically, it's because we don't feel like we'll be accepted or will be included based off of solely who we are. And people who are dealing with the looking good blind spot also are perfectionists, right? They get into that analysis paralysis where it has to be the best, and I know a lot of leaders are like, but we like that. We want the best. Yet analysis paralysis and perfection lead to more failure, more lack of collaboration, more isolation. People don't want to collaborate and work and partner with people who are perfectionists and who get stuck in the analysis paralysis. Because that is like the overthinker. They overthink things. And when you're overthinking, you're locking down your creativity, your innovative side, your resourcefulness, and your resilience. And looking good also tells us that the person might not have a relationship with the process. They don't either trust it, they don't like it. And really, they have a bigger relationship with the results, which again, I know sounds great. Yet if you're only focused on the result and you're not focused on the process, you're leaving things on the table. And specifically, it's detrimental to relationships. And you're not seeing the full picture. There's a process for a reason. We don't jump from one thing to result. There is a process to get there. So again, this person, they might be the top performers in your company. We see that a lot. They are the top performers. And really, when you have a top performer, you want them to share and be a contribution and be with and connected with everyone, because you want that achievement, that performance to ripple out. And so on the other side of that, to transform that, we look at creating the space to understand what mistakes and failure are. So the looking good person does not want to make a mistake. They do not want to fail at anything, similar to the playing it safe and avoiding pain. So you're starting to see how these sound the same, yet they're just slightly different in how they show up. And people can be experiencing multiple blind spots. Like I said, you're already probably thinking this is either me or this is someone on my team. And so when you create the space for understanding and reframing, like we talked about yesterday, reframing mistakes, failure, setback, and when I think of this way of transformation, I think of technology companies where they encourage and inspire their teams to break things. Break that, find the bug, find the mistake, use it, use it until it breaks. Push it as far as you can till it breaks. Because when something breaks in technology, we're on to the next version. So when I think of, like a phone, I believe iPhone is on like iPhone 12 now or something like that. And just imagine if we were still on iPhone 1 or iPhone, right? There wouldn't be a number because it's just the iPhone. And how limited and maybe, I know there's some people who are like, technology and phones, but just think about that. Let's put a person in that spot. If they never pushed and went beyond or understood and had a relationship with failure or mistakes, how limited is that experience? And you could already start to see the limitation in creativity, innovation, resourcefulness, and all those things that are fantastic. That's how we grow. That's how we develop. And so also what supports the transformation of this person and to shift the person who is looking good and committed to looking good is really understanding humanity versus impermeability, which is, we are humans, mistakes happen, and really creating and designing culture around that. And now understanding that it is okay to fail. Yet we also get to have that culture of feedback so that they're understanding and having the experience to debrief what happened. So not just saying, yeah, we all make mistakes. We're all, failure happens. That's not feedback. That sets the tone and the context for people to go and not identify with failure or setbacks or mistakes. Yet there also gets to be this feedback culture in there as well, so that there is an experience to connect with that experience or that circumstance that happens, to understand what was the source of the mistake, what did we miss, what worked, because a lot of what we think is a failure or mistake, a lot of it works. And so that's why, at Evolve, one of our signature, or actually two of our signature customized trainings is emotional intelligence in the workplace. And then the second one is feedback and intervening in the workplace. Because, first, we believe and we know emotional intelligence is the source of a thriving culture. When everyone in your company is activated in their emotional intelligence, they understand their own emotions and they're able to understand and respond to other people's emotions. This isn't psychology, it's just emotional intelligence. That the relationships start to get stronger. The transparency becomes stronger. The collaboration, communication, and performance all goes up. Because now we're understanding how to not identify with things and understand, it's just my emotional response and it's their emotional response, and how to move through conversations, circumstances, specifically challenging ones, which I know we've all had those in the workplace this year, and really move forward through whatever the circumstance or the conversation was. And then once we create that foundation of emotional intelligence, we move into the feedback and intervening training, because we believe once you understand your emotions and other people's emotions and you're able to navigate through all that, then you have a stronger foundation to understand and create feedback, to give it and to receive it as neutral. And in this, in this climate of 2020, intervening has become a big piece of the workplace, where you see something and you don't say something, that is no longer acceptable in a lot of companies. Or something happened to you and you don't say something, whether it's with a colleague or a client or a vendor in the workplace. And, now we get to know how to respond, not react, and not to suppress it, not to ignore it as if it didn't happen. And, the companies that we've been working with this year, they are committed to feedback and intervening. And we've already worked with them on emotional intelligence, but committed to feedback and intervening because of the type and the intensity of conversations that have been going on this year. So the third blind spot is looking good. And tomorrow I'll be talking about the fourth blind spot, which is also one of mine, which is being in control. And so I will see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the fourth blind spot, and have a great rest of your day. If you have any questions or any comments, post them in the comments below, and you can reach out to us directly at culture@evolveeq.com. Have a great day.